This narration contains disturbing content and mentions of suicide. Viewer discretion is advised. I hope you enjoy my very first original story. There's a tradition in my family that when the male child turns 12, his father will take him on his first hunt to mark the beginning of his manhood. My father, however, only had me, a skinny, tall 12-year-old girl who was all scraped knees and elbows. He didn't let this stop him. And besides, I was excited to go on the hunt. I loved my father more than anything, and he had always doted on me. My mother had died unexpectedly 2 years prior, and he swore he would not marry again. There would be no future son to carry on this tradition, and I was proud to be by my father's side on my first hunt. We woke up the morning of the hunt, just before dawn. I peeked out the blinds and then pressed my fingers against the cold glass of my window. It had rained last night, and the forecast said it would rain all week. Autumn had brought an abrupt chill to the air. We lived in Alaska, and it would only be a few short weeks before the harsh winter snows would begin to fall. Our family's hunts always took place before the first snow. I pulled on warm, long johns before I put on my jeans and layered a couple of long-sleeve tops under my favorite hoodie. I grabbed my heavy, wool socks and waterproof boots and met my dad in our kitchen. His head turned as he heard me enter, and his face lit up in a bright smile. Immediately, he began regaling me with tales from his own first hunt as he poured hot coffee into his old, scuffed thermos. I didn't think I'd seen him this happy since Mom died. It almost looked like he was dancing as he bustled around our cozy kitchen, packing sandwiches, snacks, and drinks into a cooler. Dad hunted as a hobby and to lower our grocery bill. He typically went alone, but I could tell he was genuinely happy that I was coming with him. This made me excited to go too, as, to be honest, I really wasn't that keen on killing animals. But I was really looking forward to sharing this day with my beloved father and making our own hunting memories together. We pulled up to what looked like a dirt trail leading off the back road we'd been driving on for the last 4 hours. We had to go the rest of the way by ATV before continuing on foot. While Dad set up our rides, I checked through what ammunition he brought. 45-70, of course. We might be seeing moose or even bear. 2 holsters, a small one that my dad got me for my birthday to go along with the whole coming-of-age thing, complete with a 10mm pistol, and a big old leather one for Dad that had his precious .44 Magnum. Dad liked Clint Eastwood and thought he looked like Dirty Harry holding that thing. I guess it's good to have around the most powerful handgun in the world, though. I still felt uneasy having a gun on my hip, but I didn't want to disappoint Dad. So I strapped on my new holster and made sure it was secure before taking one last look at the truck. I felt my breath catch as I suddenly noticed a magnificent great horned owl sitting on the roof of the truck.
Morgan.
Dad called playfully. I turned to see where he was calling from, and by the time I turned back moments later, there was nothing there. After about an hour of hiking, I heard a yell up ahead.
Hey, look at this.
My dad pointed towards several small tents strewn about the ground. It looked like a long-forgotten campsite, with 3 tents and a faint outline of what might have once been a campfire.
Who do you think was camping all the way out here?
I asked.
Oh, you know, hunters. Outdoorsy types. I'm sure all kinds.
Dad replied.
But aren't a lot of dangerous animals out here? You know, bears.
I couldn't help but remember all the stories my dad would tell me about moose and grizzlies mauling unprepared hunters, and city folk that don't understand how vicious Mother Nature could truly be. I've always had a fear of those powerful, unpredictable animals.
Don't worry, hon. A seasoned hunter knows how to deal with some bears.
Dad said confidently. I wonder if he remembered those stories. Taking a moment to calm myself, I thought about the pistol on my side. I followed Dad as he poked around the abandoned site. The tents were on the ground, but they looked like they fell down after being left out for a long time. There were no signs of danger or struggle. Dad was able to find a small backpack in one of the tents, but the other two were completely empty. It was a brown, worn leather bag. It smelled like mildew. I remember I had to hold my breath to keep from gagging. Inside the bag, we found another small leather pouch with a journal inside. The pouch kept it pretty intact, but unfortunately, upon opening the front cover, the entries were written in another language.
What is that?
I blurted out. Fear started to take root in my belly. I got the most intense feeling that something about this place and situation wasn't right.
Maybe Ukrainian? Russian? I'm not sure.
Dad was happily flipping through the pages, seemingly feeling none of the uneasiness I did. For some reason, this didn't make me feel any better.
Okay, so can we go now, please?
I asked. Dad stopped flipping through the pages and looked at me, ignoring my plea.
Hey, look. What do you think of this?
He handed the book over to me, holding it open to a page near the end. A large scribbled drawing was taking up nearly both pages, vaguely in a hulking bipedal shape. Around the edges of the drawings to the left, right, and bottom were 3 dark brown smudges.
This is kinda weird.
Dad quickly took the book back from me, seeming enamored with the drawing.
Look at it. I wonder how long this has been out here. Amazing. This could have been here for decades sealed in that pouch.
My dad said excitedly. My mother used to tease him about his love for history. She would say he preferred his old books, Arrowhead collection, and antiques more than her. I knew this journal seemed like a major find to him, but that drawing was making me feel nauseous the longer I stared at it.
Yeah, amazing. Looks like a nightmare someone had.
Dad ran his finger along the brown smudges. They were about the same size as his fingertip.
I think this might be blood.
Dad said, sounding mesmerized by the prospect.
What? No way. Don't try to scare me.
Honey, I'm not. I promise. It's just blood turns dark when it dries.
I didn't reply. Instead, I just stared at my dad, waiting for him to continue.
Hon, it's all right. It was probably some hiker friends messing around up here, and one of them was an artist or something. Besides, you see the site. This was probably years ago.
His attempt at making me feel better didn't work.
Dad, if there's blood in that book, I'd say that's plenty reason to leave. All in favor of not being killed by old camp ghosts, say aye.
After a short pause and no eyes, I added,
Aye.
Suddenly, the grass near one of the tents erupted and several large blackbirds took flight. The sound of their wings beating the air broke the silence. I stifled a small shriek in surprise. Dad looked amused, but his eyes drifted back to the journal, still clutched in his hands.
All right, Morgan. Let's go. But I'm gonna bring this back with us. I can't wait to see what it says.
Please at least don't bring the nasty mold bags it was in.
I groaned. Suddenly, I heard a sharp intake of breath from Dad.
What is it?
I asked.
Oh, nothing. Just a little paper cut.
Maybe we should put that in my bag before you decapitate yourself with it.
I joked. He laughed back.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Here, you put it in your bag.
When Dad handed me the book, I felt his hand, and it was ice cold.
Whoa, Dad, jeez, you got cold hands.
I dropped the journal on the ground. The cover of it had the most sickening texture, unlike any leather I had touched before.
Yeah.
He trailed off. He had this blank look on his face.
Are you all right?
I asked. He seemed to immediately snap back to his regular self.
Oh yeah, honey. I just need to...
My dad then bent over double, clutching his stomach and vomiting.
Dad? What? What's wrong?
I asked as he started vomiting. Once he was able to collect himself, he said between breaths.
It's okay, honey. It's okay. Just a little stomach ache. I'm gonna go over there and... use the bathroom, okay? Then we can go home. Just go back the trail a few minutes. Wait for me a bit, okay?
Are you sure? Are you going to be okay?
He was looking worse by the moment. He was breathing harder and sweating profusely.
Yeah, I'm okay, honey. Just give me some time. I'll call if I need help.
I could tell he was straining to seem better than he felt. So I decided to do what he said.
Okay, but please, really do call me if you need me.
I said as I grabbed my backpack. I pointedly left the journal on the ground and kicked a bit of dirt its way. I walked about 4 minutes back down the way we had come and waited for any sign of my dad. The sun was quickly making its path across the sky. The autumn days were getting short, and I knew we needed to start heading back soon. It was obvious we needed to abandon this trip, and I started to head back up the clearing to check on my dad. He must have heard me approaching because suddenly he shouted.
Morgan?
I heard Dad's voice call alarmingly through the air.
Dad!
I called back and ran as fast as I could manage on the overgrown trail.
No!
As I ran, I could hear a horrible crunching and gurgling noise, like someone's bones being eviscerated. The screams of my father rang out as I kept running, ignoring the branches ripping at my hair and face. By the time I made it back to the abandoned camp, Dad was nowhere to be seen.
Dad! Dad!
I called as best I could, unable to catch my breath. I couldn't see any signs of him anywhere. I quickly grabbed my gun and started waving it around frantically, looking through the trees and brush of the surrounding area. That's when I heard it. A horrible, low, gurgling growl coming from my left. I immediately froze. I didn't want to see what it was. After a second of thinking about it, I tightened my grip on my gun. I felt it give me courage as I lifted it and slowly turned towards the noise. The noise was a quiet, low growl now. As my eyes reached its source, I felt confused about what I saw. Before me was what looked like some dense brush and trees. I couldn't find any source for this growl. I decided to take a few steps forward. As my foot came down on a thick branch, the growling completely stopped. In front of me, the brush began to slightly move. Then it was violently shaking. I fell back, dropping my gun on the ground next to me. I desperately searched, trying to find a source for the shaking, but the whole entire section of brush in front of me seemed to be shaking in unison. It was then I realized it wasn't brush. My flashlight flashed over something shiny, so I tried to zero in on it. I held my breath as I found a large, dark eye. The brush exploded upward, and I was showered with sticks and debris as a horrible bellow escaped the thing before me. In my panic, I left my gun behind and did my best to get away from the tangled web of branches around me, to run away from whatever this was. I was too terrified to even imagine what was going to happen to me if I didn't run. My mind flashed to stories about grizzlies mauling hikers and moose goring out people's guts. I stumbled back to the clearing, still hearing whatever was behind me crashing around in the underbrush. I tripped hard and fell right onto my left knee. It felt like it was on fire as I tried to move it. I looked over to see what I had tripped on and noticed it was Dad's rifle. Dad, where was he?
Dad!
I was able to call out again when I realized whatever was in the forest would probably hear me too. It started to sound closer. I grabbed the rifle and used it to hoist myself off the ground. I couldn't fully bear weight on my knee now, but I could use the rifle as a crutch and try to get away at least. I scanned the campsite looking for more signs of my dad or a way out. I started limping as fast as I could with the rifle as my crutch in the direction I hoped was going to lead me towards the ATV. The only safe thing I could think of. As I made it to the other side of the site and into the overgrown trail area, I got something caught around my feet. As I freed myself, I realized I was pulling pieces of dark cloth off my shoes. Wet, dark cloth. I retched as the smell of blood and piss reached my nose. I started to panic, so I didn't hear how close the gurgling, growling terror of the underbrush had gotten. Before I knew it was happening, I felt the ground shaking and looked up just in time to see a hulking figure smashing through the undergrowth towards me. I grasped for the rifle, lifting it and firing it straight ahead. My shot hit somewhere, but definitely not vitally. Whatever the thing was stumbled to the side, screaming its awful, gurgling scream. I started to heave myself away when I felt the ground fall out from under me. After a moment of confusion, I felt an incredibly hard thing crash into my side. When I woke up, I couldn't see anything, but I could hear beeps and buzzing. I tried to move my arms and found I couldn't move them very far without resistance.
Oh my God!
I heard a woman's voice call out. After what felt like an eternity of poking and prodding and shuffling things around me, I felt something lifting off my face. When the light hit my eyes, a fiery pain shot through my skull. Apparently, I had a severe concussion from a tumble down a steep ravine, along with a broken forearm, fractured left knee, and several cracked ribs. I was found by another pair of hunters, almost dead from hypothermia, about 12 hours after I'd taken my fall. There was no sign of my father, other than some of his torn clothes, and that rifle he left behind. My backpack was also gone, along with the weird book we found. I tried telling them about the huge animal I'd seen, but I was assured there was no sign of any bears or any other wildlife around the campsite. Telling them about the book led nowhere as well, since I had no proof it even existed. My experience was just glossed over by the authorities as a combination of my vivid imagination, PTSD, and the loss of my only parent. No one had any answers, and no one would listen. I ended up in the foster care system for 6 long years until I was able to leave at 18. All that time, I was waiting for the day I could figure out what really happened. I've planned for years for this moment in time, and every penny I've saved is going to go towards this new hunt. I was driving along a barely visible road, seemingly not kept up by anyone for a long time. By the time I got to where I needed to continue on foot, the road was barely passable. Maybe after what happened to me and my dad, they decided to abandon this place. Good, I thought. Hopefully that would just make my job easier. I grabbed a large duffel bag out of the back of my car and checked my ammunition. I'd kept my dad's rifle in pristine condition. I also had a 10mm pistol and a machete with a huge modified serrated edge, with serrations about 2 inches long. I strapped the rifle to my back, along with the machete in a lower back holster. After getting my pistol belt into place, I grabbed my small ammo bag and made sure it was securely attached to my right shoulder. The only other bag I brought with me is full of illegal bear traps, a pair of night vision goggles, and powerful hunting spotlights. I heard an owl call in the distance, unnerving me. My hand shook as I grabbed the trap bag. Despite preparing mentally for what I was about to do for years, I can't control how my heart is racing. My powerful hatred of the people that failed us, the cops who didn't even look for him, the doctors who ignored me, and that thing that took him from me. That was more than enough to give me courage. I'm prepared for whatever I have to do. I'm not fucking around. I will kill or be killed by what took my father. With everything secured, I began my hike. Every step I took wrapped my stomach up tighter. I had chosen to come around sunset, hoping the cover of darkness would give me the upper hand with my night vision goggles. But with the darkening of the sky, I felt a sense that this was the last light of day I'd ever see. I tried to stop and take a few deep breaths to calm myself. I drew my machete and prepared to come across the old campsite. As I entered the clearing where the abandoned tents used to be, I found they were all gone. There were no tents, no old campfire pit, nothing but a little clearing. I was sure this was the place, though. I decided to look around a little since the clearing was quite large. Once I reached the opposite end, I started to smell something rotten. I covered my mouth to stifle a retch as I found the bush that was the source of the stench. I couldn't help but reach my hand out and lift the branches, revealing a pile of disgusting viscera full of large and small bones, huge femurs, tiny bird bones, fur and gristle, all mixed together in a disgusting pile. I backpedaled as fast as I could, dry heaving. This thing is still killing people. I quickly dropped my trap bag on the ground. It's time. I don't know much about hunting, but what I do know is that whatever chased me that night was aggressive, and I'm guessing it wouldn't appreciate someone in its territory. I set my bear traps evenly around the clearing, with 2 especially close to the bush with the remains. 12 total traps. Now that it's totally dark, I put on my night vision goggles. and get ready to execute my plan. I took a deep breath and grabbed my dad's rifle off my shoulder. I shot it directly up into the air once. As the shot rang out, I thought of my dad, how he sounded, how he smelled. It's hard to remember now, but I could still see his smile in my head and imagine his warm voice. I blinked back tears and readied myself, training all of my senses outward, towards the forest. After several minutes of no sound other than my own breath and the slight breeze in the trees, I began to lift the rifle again. But before I could fire my second round, there was a rustle off in the distance to the right. I dropped low to the ground. It was a new moon tonight, so hopefully crouching low and being silent would be enough to hide me. I was luckily downwind of the direction of the sound. As I listened, it sounded like there was something slowly lumbering around. A low growl started to come from whatever was out there. A horrible, wet sound. After a minute of letting it shuffle closer, I decided to try and lure it in. There were evenly lined traps between me and it, so I'm positive it'll hit one if it investigates close enough. I let out a short, sharp whistle. Immediately, it went completely silent. It felt as if revealing myself caused the very wind to die in the trees. I held my breath, waiting for any sound, any tiny sign. I stared intently through the goggles in the direction I thought it was coming from. Suddenly, the ground began to shake as the creature charged directly for me, demolishing all the brush in its path. I took a step back out of fear and tripped over myself, falling to the ground. It only took a few short seconds for it to reach the clearing, and suddenly an ear-shattering shriek filled the air, and its legs dropped directly into two bear traps. I was uncontrollably shaking, so it took me a moment to realize the ground was no longer thumping. I rose from the ground on unsteady legs, finally ready to confront the thing that had ruined my life. Before me was a horrible amalgamation of fleshy tumors and fur roughly in the shape of a bear. The bulbous, grotesque thing was screaming and writhing on the ground, slipping in its blood. Its legs firmly stuck in the wicked teeth of the bear trap. It's not going anywhere. I took off my night vision goggles and grabbed my spotlights. Taking a few steps forward so I was about 10 feet away from the thing, I readied myself. Fighting back the urge to vomit, I turned on the light. I burst into tears upon seeing the nasty, tumorous body in full, imagining the pain it was in and the pain it had caused. I thought back to the bush of viscera. It was all too much. I vomited all over the ground. As I gathered myself, I realized the sounds of pain had died down. When I looked up, the creature was looking right at me, its black, beady eyes boring into mine, completely empty of emotion. For a second, I felt a strange connection. Before it launched itself forward, snapping its jaws shut mere inches from my torso, I threw myself back as the creature hit the ground, held in place by its bloody forelimbs. It didn't seem to notice its own pain anymore. It was only focused on reaching me. I felt my anger return, pushing away any feelings of connection or empathy towards the creature away. I got to my feet, sitting the light on the ground pointed at the thing. Grabbing Dad's rifle, I pointed it right at the thing's eye. I fired into its head until there were no more bullets. It slumped to the ground, letting out a wet wheeze. I fell to my knees, feeling all the emotions hit me even harder now that the hunt was done. I put my head in my shaking hands, thinking of all the time I'd spent obsessing over this, wanting this. It was finally done. I did it, Dad. After a few minutes, I got to my feet. I had a lot of cleaning up to do, after all. Turning back to the body, I immediately felt confused. The tumors on the body had begun to deflate, like some disgusting, greasy flesh balloon. I drew my machete from its sheath, curiosity driving me forward. As I approached the hulking, nasty mass of flesh and fur, I felt a hollow ball form in my stomach. Something wasn't right. I cut into the thing's neck, just under its ear. The skin peeled away easily, like a thin orange peel. As I pulled on the skin, human body parts began to be revealed, stretched and distorted at disgusting angles, rotting in some places, bulging with tumors in others. Was my father? Hello, everyone. It's been a very long time since I've uploaded, so I decided to come back on a strong note with the very first story I've ever written myself for the channel. I was so excited to get this finished, and I absolutely loved how it turned out. Firstly, I would like to thank a few people, that being my editor, Lisa, who helped me edit this story, and just without her, this story wouldn't be nearly as good. You know, she talked to me on the phone and over email and just helped me with grammar and just figuring out how the story should go. And I'm just so thankful to have someone like that to help me. And it's also always nice to make a new friend. So thank you so much for that, Lisa. And my dad, Big Daddy Stone, who actually, played the dad in the story. If you don't know, he has his own YouTube channel, which I will have linked in the description. And I will also have linked the Dark Somnium's channel, who did all of the original music for this story. And he does the music for all of my stories, but with this one, he actually scored it for me. So I did all of the sound design on it, but instead of taking his tracks that I have access to and putting it in and kind of trying to make it sound good that way, I gave him the story after I sound designed it, and he scored it for me like a movie score, like the real deal. It was so cool that he did that for me. So thank you so much, Dark Somnium. I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. I think that this story turned out 10 times better thanks to that. I knew I would be taking a risk making the ending of this story the way that it is, but I really did put myself in the shoes of the main character. I custom wrote the two main characters for me and my dad. So I tried to ask myself, in a realistic situation, where this crazy stuff actually happened, what do I think would happen to me in this character's shoes? And I don't know. It felt like I don't think someone would be able to handle that realistically, finding out that they had just killed their own father and been put through all this suffering. And I don't know, let me know what you think of that ending. I struggled with it a little bit. An early draft of the story had the main character Morgan going on to become someone who wanted to try and track down paranormal things or, whatever, and make sure things like this didn't happen to anybody else. And I was going to make it end with something like that. But for some reason, I just didn't feel like that would really fit. I felt like it would fit if this story was going to be really long, but I didn't want this story to be very long. I wanted to come back with a shorter one that I could get out quicker. And I have a much, much longer story in the works right now. Since I started writing a little bit, I decided I would keep writing and see if I can come up with anything else cool for the channel. So I do have a much, much longer story that I'm writing coming out. I have no idea when, because I don't think I'm even halfway through, and it's like incredibly long, probably already over an hour's worth of narration. But I'm incredibly excited to put that one out because I think the concept is really cool. But I won't talk about that right now since it's so early in production. I'm really excited to see what you all think, and I will be answering questions in the comments. I don't think I'm going to address much more about the story here in this audio portion at the end because I would like to let you all ask questions you would like to ask and sort of let you dictate the conversation. So leave your questions about the plot or any question you have down below. And if you have any critiques or anything like this didn't make sense, this could have been better, please let me know because that will also help me in my future writing. And I do plan to write more for the channel. And I just, hope I can get better. And of course, with the help of my new friend Lisa, she is incredibly talented at editing and she has a professional job that requires professional writing. So I at least hope we can bring you some stuff that is at least this good or better. I have sincerely missed uploading and I've sincerely missed interacting with all of you. So I'm really happy to be back. And I think my next upload will probably be a Rom's Ramblings. So I'll see you all there. And I hope you have a fantastic day.